Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel on analytics, machine learning, and AI. In this playlist, I will cover various aspects of Azure Data Factory, not only conceptually but also through hands on examples. In this video, we will look at how to build a very simple data pipeline. We will create a data pipeline to copy and unzip the zipped source data files into a container in Azure Data Lake Storage. Before we do that, I will create the containers where I will be storing the data within Azure Data Lake Storage. Once the pipeline is built, we will run the pipeline and monitor and review the results. Finally, we will review the pipeline components. Let's get going. I'm going to go to the Azure portal. Here I have a resource group that I created earlier. I'm going to click on the storage account. Under data storage, I'm going to click on containers. I'm going to go ahead and create a new container and call it landing. Since this is where we will ingest the data, I'm going to not allow any anonymous access to this container. In the advanced section, I will leave the defaults since we don't need any encryption for our container. I'm going to repeat the process and create another container called raw. We can also view these containers within Azure Storage Explorer. Let's quickly switch to Azure Storage Explorer for a second. If we expand the storage container, we should see the containers that were just created. I'm going to upload files into the landing container. I'm going to select the zipped file sample data from my local computer and click on upload. If we now switch back to Azure portal, we can see that the landing container has the zipped file. So we now have the source file for the pipeline. I'm going to switch to Azure Data Factory. On the main page of Azure Data Factory, I'm going to select the ingest style to start the copy data tool. On the properties page of the copy data tool, I'm going to choose built-in copy task under task type. And I'm going to select run once now since I don't want it scheduled. I'm going to go ahead and click on next. On the source data store, I'm going to select the source type as Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. And I'm going to create a new connection to my storage account. I'm going to select my Azure subscription and the storage account. We will look at some of these additional properties in detail in a later video. But for now, let's just test the connection and select create. I'm going to select the newly created connection under the connection dropdown. I'm going to select my source file. I will navigate to the landing container and I'm going to select the sample data.zip file that we just uploaded. Now here we have a couple of settings that are important. I'm going to select the binary copy checkbox. This ensures that the file is copied as is. I'm also going to select the zip deflate under compression type. This will ensure that the file is unzipped on copy. I'm going to uncheck the preserve zip file name as folder checkbox. This ensures that the zip file name is not created as a folder. I'm also going to leave the checkbox recursively because I want to have all the files unzipped if they are within subfolders. Alright, so let's go ahead and click next. On the destination data store page, I'm going to select storage account since it is also the destination for the data. I'm going to select the link service that I created from the connection dropdown. In the folder path section, I'm going to select the raw container since this is where I want to copy the source files. I will leave the other settings unchanged and click on next. On the settings page, I'm going to specify a name for the pipeline and its description. I'm going to select next to use other default configurations. On the final summary page, we can now review all the settings and select next. On the deployment complete page, I'm going to select monitor to directly execute the pipeline and to monitor the pipeline. If we now switch to the monitor tab, we can now see the status of the pipeline. If we refresh and click the link under the pipeline name, we can either view the activity run details or we can also rerun the pipeline. Under the activities section, we can now see that the status has succeeded. We can select the eyeglasses icon under the activity name column and see the details about the pipeline. Here we can see the pipeline details that one file was read and 34 files were written. So this was the zip file that was copied and extracted. We also see the copy was done from ADLS Gen 2 to ADLS Gen 2 since we use the same storage account. Also, we can see the duration of the copy activity. Let me go back to Azure portal and click on the storage account. If I go to the raw container, we can now see that the zipped file has been unzipped and we have the folders along with the source files. So with that, we have completed our first data pipeline in Azure Data Factory. Let me switch back to Azure Data Factory Studio. Let's click on the author icon to look at the pipeline that we just created. Under the Factory Resources menu, if we expand the pipelines folder, we can see the pipeline that we just created. Notice that the pipeline has a single activity which corresponds to the copy activity. Under the datasets folder, we can see the two datasets that correspond to the source and destination. The datasets are named automatically. We can of course rename these datasets. If I click on the source dataset, we can see that the linked service that we created to connect the dataset with the storage account. We can see the file path to the container for the source zip file. We also see the properties that we set earlier, such as the compression type as zip deflate. We can also similarly check the settings for the sync dataset. Here the file path shows the container raw. Notice that we are copying and unzipping to the root of the container. I'm going to create a new folder, demo, under datasets. I'm going to rename the datasets as shown. So the datasets for the pipeline have been renamed. I will now move them into the demo folder. This just allows me to navigate and manage my Data Factory artifacts easily. If I click on the copy data activity and click on the source tab, we should now be able to see that it points to the renamed source dataset. Similarly, if I click on the sync tab, we can see that it points to the renamed destination dataset. I'm also going to rename the pipeline now. We can now see that the Publish All button is enabled since there are pending changes. I'm going to go ahead and click on Publish All. It's important to point out here that these changes will be published to Data Factory, or the live environment as it is called. This is a repository within Azure Data Factory. We will look in a later video how we can publish to Azure DevOps. I'm going to go ahead and click on Publish. So those changes have now been published. With that, we have now completed building our first Data Factory pipeline and reviewing its components. I hope you enjoyed our first hands-on exercise building a data pipeline with Azure Data Factory. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching my YouTube channel. We will cover a lot more in future videos. Please check the resources section below to see the links and resources available for this video. If you like my channel, please subscribe to it and don't forget to hit the like button.